Hello, history buffs. Welcome back to Old News. Today, the calendar flips to 1943. If the previous year was about holding the line, 1943 was about turning the tide. This was the year of the counterpunch, rising resistance, and exploding social tensions at home. The world in 1943 was still gripped by the war, but the momentum was shifting. The Allies weren't just defending anymore, they were invading. In North Africa, the Allies achieved a decisive victory with the surrender of the Axis forces in Tunisia, ending the Desert Campaign and opening the door to the invasion of Italy. The summer saw the Allies storm the beaches of Sicily, knocking fascist Benito Mussolini from power. By September, Italy had surrendered, though German troops quickly occupied much of the country, turning it into a new battleground. On the Eastern Front, the Soviet Union's Red Army launched a relentless counteroffensive. The Battle of Kursk in July involved nearly 3 million soldiers and thousands of tanks. It remains the largest tank battle in history and resulted in a crushing defeat for Germany. Hitler's forces would never launch a major offensive in the East again. Soviet troops began to reclaim territory, liberating cities and villages that had suffered under occupation. But resistance wasn't just found on the battlefield. In April, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising began. Jewish resistance fighters, armed with smuggled weapons and homemade Molotov cocktails, held off the might of the German SS protection squad for nearly a month. It was a tragic, heroic act of defiance that proved the human spirit could not be extinguished even in the darkest circumstances. The U.S. air offensive in Europe escalated dramatically. Founded on the strategic doctrine of high-altitude daylight precision bombing, which provided the U.S. Air Force with a claim of moral superiority over British night area bombing by focusing only on specific industrial targets to minimize civilian losses. Championed by figures like General Henry Hap Arnold, this entire vision rested on the top-secret Norden Bombsight, an electromechanical computer famously touted to ensure pinpoint accuracy. Propaganda famously claimed the Norden could drop a bomb into a pickle barrel from 20,000 feet. The sight worked by having the bombardier lock onto the target, allowing the device to take control of the aircraft's autopilot to perfectly synchronize the plane's movement for release. It was used extensively by B-17s and B-24s in daylight raids. But key battles in Europe, such as the disastrous Black Thursday Schweinfurt raid, where over 60 B-17s were lost, exposed the flaws. The Norden's precision promise was shattered by heavy German flak and fighter opposition, leading to catastrophic losses and a massive strategic debate among leaders like General Karl Toohey Spatz and General James Doolittle. The controversy centered on the difficult choice between abandoning the high-altitude precision policy for safer, less accurate methods, like bombing on the leader or adopting radar-based area bombing, or attempting highly dangerous low-altitude missions, such as the costly raid on the Ploesti oil fields in Romania, to ensure accuracy against key targets. The strategic challenges were further magnified in the Pacific, where initial B-29 raids over Japan were defeated by the extreme altitudes and the powerful, unpredictable jet stream, which they didn't know about before, and made the Norden unusable. Ultimately, the quest for precision was abandoned for strategic success. The Air Force entirely reversed its moral doctrine in 1945, switching to massive, low-altitude incendiary raids against Japanese cities. This radical shift, while controversial, destroyed Japan's war industry and marked the final decisive success of the air offensive, despite the ultimate failure of Norden's founding vision. In the broader Pacific, the United States and its allies pressed their relentless island hopping campaign, a critical strategy designed to bypass heavily fortified Japanese strongholds and isolate their forces. The brutal 6-month battle for Guadalcanal, the first major Allied land offensive, finally ended in February 1943 with an Allied victory, securing a crucial air base and proving that the Japanese could be defeated on land. This success was followed later that year by the capture of Tarawa in November. A bloody 76-hour engagement that showed both the almost unimaginable ferocity of Japanese resistance and the growing but costly power of American amphibious assaults. The immense casualties sustained here were instrumental. The lessons learned at Tarawa, particularly the need for overwhelmingly heavy pre-invasion bombardment, paved the way for refining the amphibious tactics that would define the rest of the Pacific War. On the American home front, one of the most dramatic and unique stories in 1943 was the Zoot suit riots in Los Angeles. The Zoot suit was a bold fashion statement. High-waisted, wide-legged, tight-cuffed trousers paired with a long coat featuring wide lapels and padded shoulders, often topped with a flamboyant hat and a long keychain. Popularized by young Mexican-American men known as pachucos, as well as some black and Filipino youths, the Zoot suit became a symbol of cultural pride, individuality, and resistance. But in wartime America, the Zoot suit was also controversial. The United States was under strict rationing, and the War Production Board had issued regulations limiting the use of wool, fabric, and other materials. The Zoot suit's extravagant use of cloth, at a time when everyone is expected to make, do, and mend, was seen by some as unpatriotic, even rebellious. This perception fueled resentment, especially among servicemen stationed in Los Angeles, which viewed Zoot suiters as flaunting the sacrifices required by the war effort. Tensions boiled over in June 1943. After a series of altercations between servicemen and Zoot suit-wearing youths, thousands of sailors and soldiers flooded into downtown LA, attacking anyone they found wearing the distinctive suits. The violence lasted nearly a week, with police often arresting the victims rather than the perpetrators. The riots spread to other cities, exposing deep racial and social divides in wartime America. The Zoot suit riots were about more than just fashion. They were a flashpoint for issues of race, class, and identity. For many Mexican Americans, the Zoot suit was a badge of pride in the face of discrimination. For others, it was a symbol of generational and cultural conflict. In the end, the riots forced the nation to confront uncomfortable truths about prejudice and belonging, even as it fought for freedom abroad. In November, President Roosevelt, Prime Minister Churchill, and Premier Stalin met face-to-face for the first time at the Tehran Conference. There they coordinated military strategy and began planning for the post-war world, including the opening of a second front in Western Europe. Construction also finished on a new monument in Washington, D.C. The Jefferson Memorial was dedicated, standing as a complicated symbol of liberty in a year where liberty was being fought for on every front. Innovation in the early 40s was driven by necessity. Nylon, first introduced in the late 1930s, became a wartime staple in 1943. With silk and rubber in short supply, nylon was used for parachutes, ropes, and even toothbrush bristles. The nylon stocking became a symbol of both scarcity and ingenuity as women adapted to new fashions and materials. And the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine was awarded to Henrik Dam and Edward Doisy for their discovery of vitamin K, essential for blood clotting, a breakthrough with immediate wartime medical applications. Culture and entertainment offered much-needed escape. Casablanca, starring Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman, premiered and quickly became a classic, winning the Academy Award for Best Picture. And Bing Crosby's Sunday, Monday, or Always, and the Andrews Sisters' Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy filled the airwaves. On Broadway, Oklahoma premiered. It was the first musical by Rodgers and Hammerstein, and it revolutionized theater by integrating song and dance directly into the plot. Meanwhile, a shortage of male athletes led to the formation of the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League, proving that women could fill the stadiums just as well as the factories. 1943 was a year of friction, between armies, between cultures, and between the old world and the new. The end of the war was visible, but the path there was getting bloodier. As you reflect on this and other episodes, remember, those that fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. History isn't just a list of dates, it's a mirror. Stay tuned and we'll catch you in the next episode of Old News.